after Pesach or after the holidays are usually recovery Shabbat. Like people need they need to go slowly with Shabbos in our communities. So it's a good thing that we'll have the Shabbat to recover from the holidays. We're counting the Omer. We're on page 186.
מודעני לפניך, מלך חי וקיים, שחזרת בי נשמתי בחמלה. מודעני לפניך, מלך חי וקיים, שחזרת בי נשמתי בחמלה. רבה אמונתך, רבה אמונתך,
רבה אמונתך, רבה אמונתך. מודעני לפניך, מלך חי וקיים, שחזרת ונשמתי בחמלה. מודעני לפניך, מלך חי וקיים, שחזרת ונשמתי בחמלה. רבה אמונתך, רבה אמונתך, רבה אמונתך, רבה אמונתך. Offer thanks to you, ever living sovereign, that you have restored my soul to me in mercy. How great is your trust. We're on page 192, and as we enter this space that we try to create together, as we acknowledge each other's presence, as we acknowledge those that are sitting here with us in person, as we acknowledge those that are joining us in Zoom, in person in Zoom, and those that are connecting with us through YouTube and Facebook, we look around. We say, "Ma tovu alecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Israel." Ma tovu alecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Israel. We'll humbly bow down before you, Adonai, my Maker. Adonai et ratzon, Elohim berov chasdecha, aneni behemet ishecha. And on page 194, we take a moment to think about our bodies. Think about these vessels, sacred vessels that carry our existence. We try to give loving attention maybe to some part of our body that needs relaxation. Try to focus for 1 second on our breath. In and out. Blessed are you, Adonai, who heals all flesh, working wondrously. Baruch atah Adonai, Rofeh kol basar, umafli la'asot. And as we turn our Sidorim to page 196, for the blessing for our souls, we will be introducing new melody today. So it will take you about twice to have it perfect in your mind. So by the second time, we invite you to join us and sing with us. נשמה שנתת בי, טהורה היא, טהורה היא. Join us once again. אלוהי, נשמה שנתת בי, טהורה אתה יצרת, אתה נפל בקרבי, טהורה היא, טהורה היא. From the beginning. אלוהי, נשמה שנתת בי, שמרה בקרבי, טהורה היא, טהורה היא. ברוך אתה אדוני אשר בידו נפש כל חי ורוח כל בשר, איש, source of all creation, sovereign of all souls. Praise are you, Adonai, in whose hand is every living soul and the breath of humankind. We're on page 198 for Birkot HaShachar, blessings for the daily miracles.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who has given the mind the ability to distinguish day from night.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who opens the eyes of the blind.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who frees the captive.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who lifts up the fallen.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who stretches the earth over the waters.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who strengthens our steps.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who clothes the naked.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who gives strength to the weary.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who removes sleep from the eyes, slumber from the eyelids.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who has made me in the image of God.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who has made me free.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who has made me a Jew.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who girds Israel with strength.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who crowns Israel with his splendor.
Amen.
On page 204, the blessing for the study of Torah. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו לעסוק בדברי תורה. O Adonai, our God, let the words of Torah be sweet in our mouths and the mouths of your people Israel, so that we, our descendants, and the descendants of all your people Israel, may know you by studying your Torah for its own sake. Blessed are you, Adonai, who teaches Torah to your people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, המלמד תורה לעמו ישראל.
Amen. We continue with Elu Devarim, page 206. These are things that are limitless, of which a person enjoys the fruit of the world, while the principle remains in the world to come. They are honoring one's parents, engaging in deeds of compassion, arriving early for study, morning and evening, dealing graciously with guests, visiting the sick, providing for the wedding couple, accompanying the dead for burial, being devoted in prayer, and making peace among people. But the study of Torah encompasses them all.
Page 212, the blessing for the Psukei Nesimula.
Baruch Shema v'haya haolam, Baruch Shema, Baruch Oseh Bereshit, Baruch Omer ve'oseh, Baruch Goser u'mekayem, Baruch merachem al haaretz, Baruch merachem al habriot, Baruch meshalem tzachto lireya, Baruch Eloham v'kayam laletzach, Baruch podeh u'mazil, Baruch hu, Baruch Shemo.
Praise, we extol you, have the claim of sovereignty, for you are the source of life in the universe. For God that is the universe, praise and glory to them.
מלך מהולל, בת תשבחות, מלך מהולל, בת תשבחות.
ברוך אתה
אדוני, מלך מהולל, בת תשבחות.
Let's stay there with that again. And let's say להודות לאדוני. Page 214. להודות לאדוני ולשמח להשמך העליון. טוב להודות לאדוני.
הגיב בבוקר חסדך, הגיב בבוקר חסדך,
לדוד רוממך לא היה מלך, בעמלך שמך לא לעם בהד.
בכל יום אברכך, בלילה שמך לעולם באין.
גדול אדוני ומהולל מאוד, בגדולתו אין חקר.
דולדו ישבח מעשיך, וגבורותיך יגידו.
אמר כבודותיך בדברי נפלאותיך אשיחם.
וזוז נורותיך יאמרו, וגדולתך אספרנה.
זכר לטובך יביאו, בצדקתך ירננו.
חנון ברחום אדוני, ערך אפיים וגדול חסד.
טוב אדוני לכל, ברחמיו על כל מעשיו.
יודוך אדוני כל מעשיך, וחסידיך יברכוך.
כבוד מלכותך יאמרו, בגבורתך ידברו.
להודיע לבני אדם גבורותיו, וכבוד אדם מלכותו.
מלכותך מלכות כל עולמים, וממשלתך בכל דור ודור.
סומך אדוני לכל הנופלים, וזוקף לכל הכפופים.
עיני כל אליך ישברו, נתנותם להם את אוכלם בעיתו.
פותח את ידיך, ומשביע לכל חי רצון.
צדיק אדוני בכל דרכיו, וחסיד בכל מעשיו.
קרוב אדוני לכל קוראיו, לכל אשר יגרעו באמת.
רצון ירב יסב, את שבת המשמה ויושיעם.
שומע אדוני את כל אוהביו, ואת כל רשעים ישמיר.
תהילת אדוני ידבר פיhi, ויברך כל בשר שם קודשו, לעולם בהד.
ואנחנו נברך יה, מעתה ועד עולם, הללויה.
Page 115, Psalm 218, Psalm 150. Let's say a word about Psalm 150. This is the last of the Psalms in the book of Psalms. And it's like, we want you to remember that there are many ways to connect with the reality of the divine presence. If you like to do it by dancing, go for it. B'machol. If you like doing it by drumming, b'tof. That works too. If you like doing that by playing instruments, do it. Of course, if hearing the shofar helps you make that connection, go for it. So, the very bottom line of the Psalms is that there are many ways to connect with God and to allow our spirits to become connected with the common denominator of all existence. And a part of growing up, and a part of becoming aware of ourselves, also for adults also, is being able to recognize what allows us connect our own spirits. Page 218, Psalm 150.
Hallelujah.
נשמת כל חי, תברך את שמך, אדוני אלוהינו, לרוח כל בשר, תפאר ותתרומן זכרך מלכנו תמיד. Master of all generations, who is praised in a multitude of praises, who guides the world with abundant loving kindness, and all creatures with mercy. Adonai neither slumbers nor sleeps, God awakens the sleeping, arouses those who slumber, and gives speech to the mute. And God loosens the bonds of captives, God supports the fallen, and strengthens those who are bent over. You alone do we acknowledge. Page 220.
מלא שיר הקיים, ולשוננו רינה, בידינו פרוסות, כנשרי שמיים, ברגלינו קלות קיילות. אלוהינו מלא שיר הקיים, ולשוננו כנשרי שמיים, ברגלינו קלות קיילות. אין אנחנו מספיקים להודות לך, ולברך את שמך מלכנו. אין אנחנו
שמיים, ברגלינו קלות כאיילות. שוכנה on page 222.
שוכנת מרום וקדוש שמו, וכתוב רננו צדיקים באדוני, לישרים נבוא תהילה, בפי ישרים תתהלל, ובדברי צדיקים תתברך, ובלשון חסידים תתרומם, ובקרב קדושים תתקדש. ומקלות ריבות עמך בית ישראל, ברינה יתפאר שמך מלכנו, בכל דור ודור ישתבח שמך לעד מלכנו. האל המלך הגדול והקדוש בשמיים ובארץ, כי לך נאה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו, שושבח עלה בזמרה עוז וממשלה, נצח גדולה גבורה, תהילה ותפארת, קדושה ומלכות, ברכות והודאות מעתה ועד עולם. ברוך אתה אדוני, אל מלך גדול בתשבחות, אל ההודעות אדון הנפלאות, הבוחר בשירי זמרה, מלך אלכי העולמים.
יתגדל בהתקדש מרבם, אלמד יברח ילותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכונו יומכון וחיי בכל בית ישראל, בהגלה בהגלה ובזמן קהלים אמרו יש מרבם מבורך לעולם ולעולם בימיה, יתברך יתברך וישתבח, יתבהר בתרומן בהתנשא בהתהדר בהתהלל בהתהלל שמת הקודשה,
בריחו
להילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, אמירם ועלמה, ואמרו אמן.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך.
How numerous are your works, Adonai. In wisdom you formed them all, filling the earth with your creatures. We praise Adonai, our God, for the excellent work of your hands and for the lights you created. May they glorify you. Shine a new light upon Zion that we all may swiftly merit its radiance. Praised are you, Adonai, creator of all heavenly lights. Baruch atah Adonai, Yotzer המאורות, אבל אהבתנו אדוני אלוהינו, חמלה גדולה ותרחמת עלינו. How deeply you have loved us, Adonai, our God, gracing us with surpassing compassion. בעינינו בתורתך, ודבק ליבנו במצוותיך. Lighten our eyes with your Torah, focus our minds on your mitzvot. Unite our hearts in love and reverence for your name. Guide us in peace from the four corners of the earth, and lead us upright to our land. For you, O God, work wonders. You chose us. Truly you drew us near to your great name, that we might acknowledge you, declaring you one in love. And I want to tell you something before we seal this blessing. With these words that Jews have been saying for thousands of years, they are particularly meaningful in the context of having acknowledged last week Yom HaShoah, and understand that we will be celebrating Yom Ha'atzmaut, the day in which the independence of the state of Israel was declared. Jews all over the world for years, have been praying and saying, guide us in peace from the four corners of the earth and lead us upright to our land. So as we often say, this is about finding spiritual center. We also recognize the centrality in our spirituality of the land and the state of Israel. And we also recognize as we get closer to the Shema, that dreams can come true. Praise to you, Adonai, who chooses your people Israel in love. Baruch atah Adonai, Abocher be'amo Israel be'ahava.
Amen.
Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
We continue on page 234. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. We continue in English, middle of page 236. Adonai said to Moses as follows: Speak to the Israelite people and instruct them to make for themselves fringes on the corners of their garments throughout the ages. Let them attach a cord of blue to the fringe at each corner. That shall be your fringe. Look at it and recall all the commandments of Adonai and observe them, so you do not follow your heart and eyes in your lustful urge. למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם, אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
אדוני אלוהיכם אמת. אמת ביציב באהוב וחביב בנולד בטוב ביפה, הדבר עשה עלינו לעם בהד. We continue with the silent reading over page 238. Great joy, Moshe, Miriam, and all Israel sent to you, lifting their voices with joy. Who is like you, O God? Mi chamocha ve'elim Adonai. We're on page 240. Mi chamocha ve'elim Adonai. Mi chamocha nehedar b'kodesh. Nora tehilot osef eleh. Nora tehilot osef eleh. ריי 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 שירה חדשה שיפו גאולים ולשמחת שפת הים יחד כולם הודו והמשיכו ואמרו ריי 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 אז בתיים יחד כולם הודו והמשיכו ואמרו צור ישראל קומה ושרת ישראל ובדנו מחיודה בהיא ישראל. Rock of Israel, rise in support of Israel and redeem Judah and Israel as you promise. Our Redeemer Adonai Tzebaot is your name. Blessed are you Adonai for redeeming Israel. Baruch atah Adonai Goel Israel. We turn our Siurim to page 242 for Tfilat Amidah. We invite you to chant aloud the first 3 blessings of Tfilat Amidah with us, and then to follow along the millennia-old words of our tradition, and also try to dedicate yourself a moment for personal prayer, a moment for your Tfilah Shebalev, the prayer of your heart, to find the words that you shall speak, the words that sometimes we struggle so much to articulate. Let's allow this time of prayer help us find those words, that connection.
Adonai sefatai tiftach ufiyai ki tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu v'imateinu, Elohei Avraham ve'Elohei Yitzchak ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah ve'Elohei Rivka ve'Elohei Rachel ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor VeHanora, El Elyon Kameh Chasadim Tovim וקונה הכל, וזוכה חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה.
אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיה מתים אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הטל, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיה מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ברופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומדרום מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, מנמנת על החיות מתים, ברוך אתה אדוני מחיה המתים.
נקדש את שמך כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד למיך, וקרא סלסל ואמר, קדוש קדוש קדוש, אדוני צבאות, ולא כל הארץ אדיר אדירנו אדוני אדוננו, אדיר שמך בכל הארץ, ברוך כבוד אדוני במקום. אחד הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו מגנו, ומושיענו והוא ישמיענו, ורחמיו לעיני כל חי. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהי ציון, ודור ודור. הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. יזבח
בנים ותוקלות, השכל למעשה בראשית. Now we're still reading to page 258, sorry. And peace, goodness and blessing, grace, kindness and mercy to us and to all your people, Israel. Page 362. We're about to start our Torah service.
In kamocha Elohim Adonai, ben kamaasecha malchutecha malchut kol olamim,
וממשלתך בכל דור ודור. אדוני מלך Shalom, ki mitzion tetzeh Torah, ki mitzion tetzeh Torah, udvar Adonai b'Yerushalayim. Baruch shenatan Torah. Baruch shenatan Torah, Torah, Emor Israel, b'kdushato.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Echad Eloheinu,
אחד אלוהינו, גדול אדוננו, קדוש שמו.
גדול אדוני איתי, ונרוממה שמו יחדיו.
יזמור לדוד, אבו לאדוני ונעלים, אבו לאדוני כבוד ועוז, אבו לאדוני כבוד שמו, השתחוו לאדוני בהדרת קודש. כל אדוני על המים, אל הכבוד עירים, אדוני, אדוני, על מים רבים. כל אדוני בכוח, כל אדוני בהדר, כל אדוני שובר ארזים בה, שבר אדוני את ארצי הלבנון, וירכיבם כמו עגל לבנון וציון, כמו בן רמים. כל אדוני חוצב להבות אש, כל אדוני יכיל מדבר, יכיל אדוני מדבר קדש. כל אדוני יכול איילות, ויחשוף יערות, ומיכלו כולו מרכבות, ומיכלו כולו מרכבות. אדוני למבול ישב, וישב אדוני מלך לעולם. אדוני יוס לעמיו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום. What a scale you introduced. Good Shabbos, everyone.
Good Shabbos.
Talking about, not that we were talking about it, but I was thinking about it. Like talking in my mind about Jewish multiculturalism. This melody for Miss Morle David, I learned it when I was growing up in Buenos Aires, and I learned it as a very Ashkenazi melody. It has nothing to do with Ashkenazi Judaism, right? That was a translation of my cantor, who was a Sephardic cantor working for a German congregation. Like his name was Hugo Duer. He was totally Sephardic. And it was great. And the way they played was like totally as a Western European piece of Jewish music. And at some point, I don't know when, my 20s, when I was in Israel, I came across this melody, and written next to it, classic, unknown Sephardic. And it's a Moroccan melody for Morle David. So I started to search for how you actually play this. And this is way closer to how actually Sephardic Jews would play something like this. But it's very interesting how we take things that seem to be the same. I wouldn't play the one I grew up with. I don't like that one. I really like this one. And talking about, we'll talk a little bit about little nuances in interpretation in the context of Parashat Kedoshim. We'll share a few ideas regarding little nuances, how we can to interpret even one word that can send us in different directions. But before that, a couple of years ago, I shared this story last year by the time of Parashat Kedoshim. A couple of years ago, when I was on my way from Singapore to TVT, I was living in Singapore. I was selected to become TVT's rabbi, and we were on our way. I don't know by what time. I got a message from someone who was related to TVT, and this person was saying, "Heads up, I'm gay. My family, we are gay. I was wondering if you are going to serve my family." It was a bit longer than that, but that was the message. And I didn't even understand the question. right? Like, yeah. like, in one word, yes. In two words, of course. I don't know. Like, I didn't even think about why she would, or these people would ask this question. And it took me some time to realize that the reason I didn't even think about that is because this has been my Torah, the Torah that I live with, not exactly the Torah I was educated with. Because when I made the choice not to study in a conservative seminary in Buenos Aires, one of the reasons was that they didn't ordain gay candidates. And that was one of the moments for me to say, I want a different kind of seminary for myself. Talking about many, 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 many moons ago. Now, it was relevant to me then, and like by the time that I was coming to be TBT's rabbi, I wasn't even thinking about it. It was obvious. But it turns out that many things that might be obvious and might be granted to many of us are not obvious for those that are having the experience. Like when you make an intellectual decision or a cultural one and you live with that and you're fine, but it's not a part of what you deal with in a daily basis. Well, it's something that you know, something that here and there you apply, but that's not the reality that defines your life every day. So when Parashat Kedoshim comes and there's this prohibition for sexual relationships between two men or two women, I think it's a great opportunity to talk about it. And we're going to be reading about that in our Torah portion today. But more than that, we are constantly hearing conversations, political conversations about what the Judeo-Christian values, and when you put Judeo-Christian, it's bad already, right? Because there's a basic problem with that. We are Talmudic, so the Christian part doesn't run ever. So if you want for the Ten Commandments, fine. But after the Ten Commandments, there's no such a thing. We might have some shared values as we have with anyone else, but the reality is that the development of Jewish tradition is in the Mishnah, is in the Talmud. Of course it comes from the Torah. But none of us, even the most observant Jew, doesn't live by the rules of Torah. If you do, you're not a Jew, you're a Samaritan, or something else. If you live strictly by Torah, you're not Jewish. And any attempt to say something like that is wrong, because we are Talmudic or a Mishnaic culture, religion, people. So I want to share a few things. I want to share, we do have my screen that can be shared, right? I want to play with words, and I will need microphones, friends, as you can imagine, because we don't want for me to be the only reader, but this is what we're going to read today in the Torah, from the book of Leviticus, from Vayikra. בצחר לא תשכב, משכבי אישה תאהבה היא, ובכל בהמה לא תיתן. Can we do it more silently, the microphone part? Thank you. Let's go to English. Do not lie with a male as one lies with a woman. And the interpretation is also woman with woman. And then there's a specific explanation about that later. It is an abhorrence or abomination in other translations. To advise abomination. Do not have carnal relations with any beast and defile yourself thereby. Likewise, for a woman, she shall not lend herself to a beast to mate with it. It is perversion. So there's a clear prohibition for two men to lay with each other and to lay with a beast. And now, the context in which this happens, the Torah is speaking about incest. So it's saying, don't look at your mother, don't go to your sister. There's a long list of incest. Arayot, okay, arayot. Now this doesn't belong into the laws of incest. And then there is a switch. Previous one says, lo tishkav, then the word lishkav appears, to lay. Appears the word mishkav in the context of with the partner of your fellow. The partner is always a woman in this Torah vocabulary. You shouldn't do that. And then there's one more verse, and we go into these two verses that are kind of a bit weird to be brought together, but they belong to the category of not arayot, not incest, perversion. So I wanted to bring some other examples, and I shared some of these ideas in a sermon a year ago, but I want to go specifically to the other examples in the Torah. Vailech Reuven veshkav et Bilhah. Reuben went and lay with his father's concubine. Once again, the word that appears there is shachav, ishkaf. Are you there? Yes, thank you. So the Reuben went and lay with Bilhah. Now, the word that the Torah used for that is lishkaf, by shachav. We'll talk about the word lishkav in a moment and how it is usually used in the Torah. Let's go down. In a different situation, after a time, I'm missing something here. Okay, doesn't matter. After a time, his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph and say, lay with me. Lay with me. Shkaviti. Now, once again, the word that appears is shkaf. Now, is there any, I need to jump, if there is any variation to the use of wording for sexual relationships? There is. There's actually a very known one. The first one, the book of Genesis, Adam yada. Yada et Chava ishto. He knew his wife, Chava. So for this sexual interaction, the word that Torah uses is knew. Now, the interesting thing about the word knew is that it might refers to some more intimacy. But the only thing that you can notice, or I invite you to become aware of to this point, is that the use of the word lishkav appears actually in rougher interactions, or interactions that don't happen in agreement. I thought I put here also, did I? Yes, I did. I just mixed them. So go down to Genesis 34:2. The word shachav also appears with Shechem. Shechem, the son of Hamor, chief of the country, saw her and took her and lay her and disgraced her. Shachav, once again, the word is shachav. Not new, shachav. Now, let's go back to Genesis 24:68. I just made a mistake when I was editing this. Vayabo Yitzchak Oala. You have it? Okay. Isaac then brought her into the tent of his mother Sarah and took Rebekah as his wife. Isaac loved her and thus found comfort after his mother's death. Now, interestingly enough, once again, Torah is speaking about sex, but the word there for a loving relationship is not shachav. Not shachav, something else. There's a different choice for wording. And then I want to confuse you a little bit. And we will organize this in a moment. If you go down to the Song of the Songs, on page 3, Al mishkavi baleilot bikashti et she'avad nafshi. Upon my couch at night, Al mishkavi, my couch where I was laying, shachafti, I asked In my dream, I sought the one I love. I sought, but found him not. I want to play an argument with the word shahav, lay, and new. You can be here. I'm not going to present you with any other text now. You can turn to me. It's going to be the text for 1 minute. And it's that the idea of shahav many times implies two possible things. One is the objectification of the other, using the other as an object to fulfill your sexual needs or your instincts. The objectification of an animal, which is an it in the language of Torah. The objectification of a fellow human being. Or an alternative explanation to the word shahav can be something that is for self-fulfillment. Just for myself. I am in my couch. I am in my bed, in my space, and thinking of you. But I didn't find you, because when I am in my space, just fulfilling my own needs, you're not there. So this distinction between a relationship, they came together under the tent, they knew, and something that is not a relationship. Now, I want to share with you a classic argument regarding how many modern commentators interpret this idea in the book of Leviticus. It's saying that Torah did not know about loving relationships between two men or two women. Torah knew about abusive relationships from that perspective. And that's the prohibition. Now, that's a common commentary. And of course, Torah forbids sexual harassment, by the way. In which context Torah uses also the word shahav? In the laws that are with female slaves. If lo lishkavita, you are not supposed to lay with her immediately. You are supposed to wait. So you cannot objectify that slave. So I just want to point out that the use of the word shahav usually indicates something that is for self-fulfillment or that in which there's some kind of objectification. There are other cases, but it's quite of a common pattern. And say that Torah probably didn't know about loving relationships between people that have the same sex. I want to go with you now down to the Gemara, to Brachot. We're going to read just the first part. Do you have microphones around there? No? Okay. Miriam, do you want to read a little bit? Rabbi Miriam. Brachot 19b. Tashma.
The Gemara cites an additional proof from a Baraita. Come and hear. Great is human dignity as it overrides a prohibition in the Torah.
So the rabbis are in the middle of a discussion about something else, and at some point they come to talk about their own interpretation of the law. And they say, well, kavanat hameshorer, the intention of the writer is human dignity. So if we are making any law that ends up somehow subjugating human dignity, then human dignity overrides us. Can you do one more? The Gemara asks.
The Gemara asks why. Let us also say here, there is neither wisdom nor understanding nor counsel against the Lord. Rav Bar Shaba interpreted this prohibition, which is overridden by human dignity, before Rav Kahana, as referring to the prohibition of, according to the Torah taught to you and the ruling handed down to you, you shall do, you shall not deviate to the left or to the right from that which they tell you. The yeshiva students laughed at him as of the prohibition of you shall not deviate, which by Torah law, like all other Torah prohibitions, Why should human dignity override it any more than any other Torah prohibition?
Keep going. Keep going.
Rav Kahana replied to them, "A great man has spoken. Do not laugh at him. The sages based all rabbinic law on the prohibition of 'you shall not deviate.' However, due to concern for human dignity, the sages permitted suspension of rabbinic law in cases where the two collide. All rabbinic decrees are predicated on the mitzvah in the Torah to heed the judges in each generation and to never stray from their words."
Give me 1 second. So the rabbis are saying, we understand the limitations of our knowledge, we understand the limitations of our interpretation, and when that interpretation somehow overrides human dignity, then it's passé. When our interpretation overrides human dignity, cannot be used, say the rabbis. And then they go farther than that and say, well, that's why you need to go by the judges of every generation. You are supposed to go by what you know and the information and the knowledge that you have in your generation. Can you conclude it?
Therefore, when the sages suspend a decree in the interest of preserving human dignity is overriding a Torah prohibition. In any case, it only overrides rabbinic decrees.
And then they try to make it blurry, right? And they say, well, Torah, yes, sometimes. Why? Because rabbis, every time that they override Torah's prescriptions, and rabbis do it quite often. There is a Torah prescription that we all override by doing our weddings. How do we do our weddings? We do our weddings according to Torah, to the law of Torah? Absolutely not. Our Kiddushim and the Rabbanan, our marriage institution in Jewish tradition is totally rabbinical. Why? Because the system that Torah set in place just creates impossible families and makes complications with divorce. So there's no Jew, talking about the Judeo-Christian values, there's no such a thing as getting married in Jewish tradition with the formula that Torah provided. No one. No one. And it doesn't matter if you are ultra-Orthodox and if the other side of the scale was ultra-Reform or something else or secular that wants to have a Jewish marriage. There's no such a thing as using the rules of Torah. It's rabbinical. Now, talking about human dignity, I think one of the things that is the most challenging in the context of the conversations we have about homosexuality is questioning the legitimacy of existence of. And I find it very difficult when people do that in the name of Jewish values. Because then the question is in the name of which Jewish values, right? Have several values. And yes, the provision for Mishkav Sachar is there. It's in a very specific context with a very specific vocabulary that can be understood in different ways, that can be interpreted in different ways. They say an absolute rabbinical agreement that if even that is a transgression, which this rabbi doesn't agree with that, but in the Orthodox world, that the transgression is not more severe than any other transgression. So the entire public discussion around homosexuality doesn't have a real place from that perspective in our tradition. If you want to put it in the realm of transgressions, what's transgression? Now, but what we are, I think that what is in the stake is human dignity. How we refer and address the existence and the right to define themselves of fellow human beings. And that's a big deal. That's a big deal in our tradition. So if we want to talk about Jewish values, Mark, can you read Tanit 28? It happened that Rabbi Eleazar, the son of Rabbi Simon.
It happened that Rabbi Eliezer, the son of Rabbi Simeon, was coming from Migdal Gidor on his donkey, and he was feeling very happy because he had learned a lot of Torah. passed by a very ugly man who said to him, "Peace be upon you." Rabbi Eliezer did not answer. He said, "Good for nothing. How ugly this man is." Then he asked him, "Are all the people in your city as ugly as you are?" The man said, "I do not know, but go and tell the artist who made me, how ugly is the vessel which you may have made." When Rabbi Eliezer realized he had done something wrong, he got down from his donkey and bowed in front of the man and asked for forgiveness.
There's a very clear contradiction that the rabbis are trying to set there. They're saying he was studying Torah all day long, and he was really happy with what he knew, but he knew nothing. He didn't understand a word. The rabbis are saying he did not understand. If you are studying Torah and you are not able to recognize the foundation, the divine foundation in every single creature, then you did not understand a single word in the text. At the end, they kind of redeem the rabbi, and the rabbi makes immediate teshuvah, asks for forgiveness, right? It's an important thing. So there is a way back, and the rabbis give to this fellow rabbi his or her way back. I'll read can you read me? I made a direct citation from myself. From a year ago, yeah. And this is in the context of understanding the first commandment in the Torah. Pru verbu.
Rav Nico said,
I don't know if you noticed that's not R there.
referring dismissively to any of God's creatures is like dismissing the very foundation, the artist that created us all. Now, in the context of the creation, a common religious argument referring to LGBTQ families is that in order to fulfill the mitzvah of Pru Uruvu, be fruitful and multiply, it is a biological imperative to have sex diversity. However, that just addresses one technical, although important, component of the commandment. Multiplication is not merely a biological act, it is also a social one. Raising children can't happen in a vacuum. Children need loving, supportive, and nurturing structures. Maybe Uruvu, multiply, has something to do with the multiplicity of families, with the variety of families that enrich and beautify our world.
So the idea of the word rabbi is the same source. And when you say something that is multiple, Rav Chesed, for example, like has a variety of kinds of loving kindness. So I think that beautiful way to look at the word Rubu is to understand really the idea of multiplicity, the idea of variety, to understand, as the rabbis did, that our judgment and our understanding is limited. To understand that things that we take for granted and they are obvious to us when we are sitting in Singapore and we believe that there are all kinds of things that are obvious to everyone else, they are not obvious. And that there are messages that need to be repeated and said out loud every single year because we don't have a place that has yet the ability to hold the multiplicity, the variety, the diversity that we have in our world. And the Mishnah in Sanhedrin, this is the last one. I was about to give you a bonus track. I might do that. But I have a bonus track for Shabbat. I don't know, I feel excited about sharing another little thing about people having sex in the Torah. So I might, this all over, right? Friends, once again, Judaism doesn't see in sexuality a sin. Not by any means. Those are not our values. And Judaism doesn't see a sin in having pleasure when you have sex. Judaism sees a sin in harassment, in denigrating fellow human beings. Those are sinful behaviors. Sex is not one of them. What happens with love, with agreement, with intimacy, with respect. There are so many things that can be connected to sex. Harassment, not one of them in our tradition. Now, The Mishnah in Sanhedrin says, לפיכך נברא אדם יחידי, שלא יאמר אדם לחברו, Abi actually should be written, I think there's a mistake there, Abi gadol mi'avicha. Therefore, the first human was created one and alone, so that one person will not say to another, my father is greater than your father. We all come from one single source of creation, so we all understand that who we are, what we have, is equal to every single creature, human being in the earth. Okay, quickly into my Shabbat bonus track. I think that you cannot go without this. Okay, I had to, guys. I had to. Just 1 second. The word shachav appears so many times in the book of Ruth. So kind of, come on. If we were playing with the word shachav, the word lay. So, and this is actually a beautiful context, right? So, but it's not fully kosher, right? Naomi and Ruth are planning how to get to Boaz, and so Ruth squeezes, I twisted them, in the middle of the night to his bed, and the word that appears again and again and again and again is shachav, shachav. And maybe because the Torah or the Tanakh is saying something that might not be fully kosher, but what I want to show you is that it becomes super kosher. Boaz ate and drank, and in a cheerful mood went to lay down beside the grain pile. Then she went over stealthily and uncovered his feet, and once again, the same sword, the same root, lay down. In the middle of the night, the man gave a start and pulled back. Oh, there was a woman laying at his feet. Shachav, 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 3 times, okay? And he's not, the Torah doesn't say, and he was so excited, there was a woman there, right? So he was scared. He didn't particularly like the situation. Who are you, he asked. Like, he had no idea. It's kind of define harassment. Someone gets into your bed. Is it judgmental? Well, But then something very interesting happens. Like he steps back and says, who are you? It's a new opportunity. One, because someone is asking you, who are you? It's an invitation to what? To know each other, to ladat. So there's a transition there. There's a shift in the story. So beautiful, right? He asked, and she replied, I am your handmaid, Ruth. Spread your robe over your handmaid for your redeeming kinsman. He asked him to perform mitzvah yevum, to take her. He exclaimed, be blessed of the Lord, daughter. Your latest deed of loyalty is greater than the first. Now he's going back to, I know about you. I know that you were very loyal to Naomi. And then he says, in that you have not turned to younger men, whether poor or rich, etc. And now, daughter, have no fear. I will do in your behalf whatever you ask. For all the elders of my tongue know, now not only me. So what the text is saying, I already know, now I know. Now we know each other already. I will make sure that everybody else now know what a fine woman you are. But what the actual text says in Hebrew is, "Betabiti al tiri kol asher tombri aselach, ki yodea kol shar ami ki eshet chayil ad." It's way more beautiful. Now everybody will know that you are a woman of valor. And I think that that's the invitation of the Torah. The Torah invites us to look at the things above the level of instincts and to look at what are the creations, the things that we can create when we come to know each other. And that applies for the story of Ruth, and I think that applies also for what we are going to read in Vayikra. Shabbat Shalom.
Rabbi, one quick idea. In the Ve'ahavta, we say uv'shochbacha uv'kumecha.
נכון. I'm happy to explain about that later.
Okay.
I was trying to find, you know what? You want to stay here 20 more minutes? Okay, happy to talk about that. Okay, quick explanation about that. Because it's about you. It's about you. It's the be'avta, you know, when you say b'shovkecha u'bekumecha, it's a physical action. It has only to do with you. When it becomes about doing things with someone else, then the vocabulary or the approach needs to be different.
All right. Aharei Mot, Part 2 is found Leviticus 18:1 Aleph on page 885 in the blue book. All right. Yam Tu, Rabbi Miriam Shoshana Bat Farfel Esther, Rabbi Miriam Van Ralt, and reading will be Mark Filowitz.
Baruch hu et Adonai hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Amrach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai hamvorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol hamim. V'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. V'daber Adonai el Moshe lemor. Daber el bnei Yisrael. V'amarta elechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem. Im asher eretz Mitzrayim. Asher yashtem. Ba lo ta'asu. Uchmachashe eretz Canaan. Asher ani mevi etchem. Shema lo ta'asu. Uchulochotem lo telechu et mishpatai ta'asu v'yet chukochai ishmeru olechet v'chem ani Adonai Elohechem v'shemartem el chukochai v'yet mishpatai asher yasel tam adam v'chai v'chem ani Adonai Ish el kol sherer b'sharo lo tikaru la'aglot ara ani Adonai.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher natan lanu Torat emet. V'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Yasher Koach. Yam Tu, Malka Bar Jorge, Aliyah Hasheni, Mela Tserlin, and reading will be Daphna Guterman. Baruch Adonai Avrach Le'olam Va'ed.
Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol hamim v'natan lanu et Torato Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. ערוות אביך וערוות אמך לא תגלה, אמך היא לא תגלה ערוותה, ערוות אשת אביך לא תגלה, ערוות אביך היא ערוות אחותך, בת אביך או בת אמך, מולדת בית או מולדת חוץ, לא תגלה ערוותן, ערוות בת בנך או בת ביתך, לא תגלה ערוותן, כי ערוותך הנה ערוות בת אשת אביך, מולדת אביך, אחותך היא, לא תגלה ערוותה, ערוות אחות אביך לא תגלה, שאביך היא.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. Yasher Koach. Continuing on page 886. Yam Tu, title Rivka bat Shmuel Vilea, Gabriel ben Yitzhak, Aliyah Hashlishi, Lila Pesner, Gabriel Orshan, and returning to read will be Mark Filowitz.
Baruch atah Adonai barach. Baruch Adonai hambarach le'olam voed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam. Asher bachar banu mikol hamim v'etananu et torto. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
I'm stopping.
ערוות אחות עמך לא הגלה, כי שאר עמך היא. ערוות אני אביך לא תגלה, את אשתו לא תקרב, ידתך היא. ערוות כלתך ולא תגלה, אשר בנך היא. לא הגלה ערוותה, ערוות אשר אחיך לא הגלה, ערוות אחיך היא. ערוות ישובתך לא הגלה, את בת בנה ואת בת ביתה לא תקרא לגלו, ערוות שאר הן זמרך היא.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata betochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yasher Koach. The maftir is found on page 887, second column, second line, last word. Yam Tu, Pegel bat Mordechai v'Nechema, maftir, Phyllis Newman, and reading will be Cantorial Fellow Gabriel Newman.
Baruch Adonai Amvarach.
Baruch Adonai Amvarach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Amvarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch Atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Yes, ma'am.
זה מכל הטובות האלה ונכרתו הנפשות הסות מקרבות מקרב עמם, ושמרתם את משמרתי לבליתי עשות בחוקות התועבות אשר נעשו לפניכם, ולא תטמאו בהם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten
התורה.
Amen.
ישב אליך אבותינו ואמותינו, רבי יצחק ויעקב, שרה רבקה רחל ולאה, ויברך את כל העולים והעולות לתורה. May the one who bless our ancestors will bless all those who came up to the Torah in honor of God, the Torah, and our beloved congregation. May all of them merit the Holy One blessing of protection, rescue from any trouble or distress, and from any illness, minor or serious. May God send blessing to all of you, together with all Israel. And let us say, Amen. We also take a moment to acknowledge those that are dealing with illness. We think of those dealing with illness in their bodies, in their souls. We think of those dealing with addictions. And we pray for those also dealing with grief. We pray for healing. As we say, ישברך אבותינו ואמותינו, אברהם, יצחק ויעקב, רבקה, רחל ולאה. ויברך את החולים. May the one who bless our ancestors will bless all those that are dealing with illness, with addictions, with grief. In order to share the names, just to say them, bring them to this space, share them online, make them know, articulate them. May the blessed Holy One be filled with compassion for their health to be restored and their strength to be revived. May God swiftly send them a complete renewal of body and spirit. And let us say,
Amen.
והשלמה והחלמה מהירה, we wish to all of them complete and a fast recovery. And on page 374, please rise for Agva Anglilila. בסוד התורה אשר שם משה לפני בני ישראל על פי אדוני ביד משה על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים העולם עומד. על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים העולם עומד. על התורה ועל העבודה ועל הגמילות חסדים. על התורה ועל העבודה ועל הגמילות חסדים. יצחה ימי למחסיקים בה ותומכי המאושר. It is a tree of life for those who hold fast to it, and through Torah, through the study of Torah, through the commitment to Torah, find joy, find connection to fellow human beings, find connection to the creation of the world, the creator of the world through its creations. Shivenu Adonai Lecha benashuva, Chadesh yameinu kekeden. Return us to you, Adonai, and we will return. Renew our days. Let us experience the sweetness of renewal, of learning new things, of adjusting our judgment to our days. And help us understand that the way to return, to connect with you, starts from within our hearts, starts from us. We're on page 588, עלינו לשבח. והשב אותם.
והשב אותם.
אל לבבנו. Elohim והשב אותם אל לבביך כי אדוני הוא האלוהים ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. You may be seated. At the end of our service, we take a moment to acknowledge mourners in our community. We acknowledge those that are during the first 7 days of mourning Shiva, those that are during the first 30 days of mourning Shloshim, those that are in the cycle of the first year of mourning, and we want to acknowledge those that are connecting with us in Zoom, so if we can read the names that they are sharing.
First year of mourning for Randy Sostock.
We also want to acknowledge those that are remembering a yahrzeit today, the anniversary of someone's passing by this time of the year in years past. Remember, Alex? What was her name? Or you can support our fellows by standing or sitting, joining us with your voices or your hearts for Kaddish Aveli, Mourners Kaddish on page 598. גדל ויתקדש שמי רבה.
אמן.
בעלמא דברה חירותי, בהמליך מלכותי. בחייכון וביומכון, ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב, באמרו
אמן.
יהא שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולמי עלמיה, יתברך וישתבח, ויתפאר, ויתרומם, ויתנשא, ויתהדר, ויתעלה, ויתהלל, שמי דקודשה,
בריחו.
לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, תמירם בעלמה, באמרו אמן. יהא שלמה רבה מן שמיה, חיים טובים עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. May the memories of your dear ones, of your beloved ones, be always a blessing in your life. May be seated. So a quick announcement. This coming Friday, we will be celebrating Shabbat Atzmaut. We usually do Friday nights online, but we are doing this in person. So we invite all of you to come. We will have some Israeli food. It will include some kind of falafel and hummus, but I'm not fully sure what the staff have ordered. And I do think that I will be making hummus on Thursday. So we might have, I said, not for more than 100 people. So if we are a bit less than 100 people, and I know that in advance, I will be making hummus on Thursday, Friday. So if you want to join me on doing hummus, you are invited. You need to know. It's not easy to enter a kitchen with me. And it's even harder when I'm trying to make hummus exactly the way I want it. So if you want to stay away, that's also you can do something else at the same time. So we can, no, I'm kidding. Kind of kidding. So we can make hummus together, and we'll have a group doing some Israeli salad on Friday, so you can connect with the hummus or the salad, and on top of that we'll have some catering. It will be very nice, and we will be singing some Israeli songs, some songs that connect us also with the Jewish community and liberal Jews in Israel. And also, we will dedicate some time to acknowledge Yom HaZikaron, Memorial Day in Israel. Before we light Shabbos candles, we will take a moment to acknowledge the price of having a state, and to pray that for us not to pay that price anymore, for peace and for the well-being of the state of Israel. So we'll conclude our service now on page 625 with Adon Olam hearing.
Adon Olam,
Asher malach b'terem kol yetzir nivra le'ed nasa v'chefso kol asai melech shemo nikra ve'acharei kichot hakol levato yimlach nora ve'hu haya ve'hu hoveh ve'hu yeh b'tikvah ve'hu echad ve'en sheni להמשיך לו להכירה בלי ראשית בלי תכלית ולא העוז והמזרח והוא אלי בחיו עלי וצור חבלי בעת צרה והוא נצחי ומנוס לי מנת כוסי ביום קרב וביעקב תדרכי ותשען בהילה בהמלוכי גביעתי אדוני לי ולא יירא לה 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la ya la 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 Adon Olam Asher malach b'terem kol yetzir nivra le'ed nasa v'chefso kol asai melech shemo nikra אדוני עוש לעמיו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום. שבת שלום ומבורך everyone. La 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 la